Okay, so if you can see, I've kind of lit those pieces of fat wood on fire with a lighter. Now I'm going to try to use some matches to get underneath. And whenever you're using something like this, remember to be careful, because it is fire. We might not get a good fire today because of the wind. And yeah, I'm probably sounding self-contradicting, but we're going to go through this wind a little bit so that you can get a video. But the overall idea is just to show you the process that you use to build a fire like this, and kind of the safety that you have to have with it. And if we don't get a fire today, that just showcases how it would be out in the woods if you were camping or if you were in a survival situation. Fires are not very predictable. They don't always work well, and that's just because you know, sometimes you can't always control things. But we're gonna see what we can do today. Once we get the fire going, which it looks like it's picking up, we're going to discuss further safety once you've got your fire going. So now that the flame's gotten a little bigger, I'm gonna add our finger size and thumb size pieces of wood. If you can remember that from last week. So, you know, this small stuff is good for getting caught on fire, but once it does, it burns very fast. So you need to make sure you have the next level of twigs or wood or whatever comes next available, so that once it gets picking up like it is right now, you're ready to go. And another thing, if you ever see your fire blowing this much, and it usually shouldn't be, that probably means you, unless it's absolutely necessary, you should reconsider building a fire. Because wind is not, and I've said it so many times, and that's because it's important, wind is not your friend with the fire, because it blows stuff everywhere. And if it is necessary to have a fire and it's windy, back in last week's video, it's important to make sure that you haven't got, you know, dry leaf litter or other things that can catch on fire around, so that if stuff does blow, it doesn't catch anything on fire. So we're just gonna keep adding to this, see how big it gets. And also, if you remember from last week, and I keep bringing stuff up because retention is good. A small fire is better than a big fire. So don't try to make it a bonfire, because that's just not necessary. You go through materials faster, and it's also more dangerous and less necessary. And always be careful with fire. That sounds cliche or whatever you want to call it, but that's just because fire is dangerous. Alright, so like I said, if there's this much wind, you usually want to stop your fire, but we're going to keep it going for safety purposes, or not safety purposes, but so that you guys can have a visual aid. And whenever you're doing a fire, make sure that you have something to distinguish it. Personally, I've got a pond that's 5 feet away and a bucket, so that's one option. You can even use dirt, because when you're trying to put out a fire, you're supposed to remember you're trying to keep it from getting oxygen. And that's why blowing on fire is usually, if you've got little embers and you blow on it, it'll brighten red, and that's because you're giving it oxygen to chemically mess with, and that's how fires operate, is with oxygen. So dirt is also a good thing to put out fire, because it constricts the amount of oxygen going to it. So yeah. So, you know, you can kind of see we've gotten the fire going successfully. Usually if you follow a pattern like this, you start with your small stuff, work up to bigger stuff. Your fire's successful, and you just got to keep watching it to make sure it doesn't go out. And keep watching it, I literally mean keep watching it. You're not supposed to leave a fire unattended. You know, because fires are kind of unpredictable and stuff like that, You need to always have someone watching your fire. And that's the reason for fire watch at Young Marines. To make sure that safety is always present when you've got a fire like this or a fire like anything. So we're not going to keep it going too much longer because, like I said, this is more of a visual aid, and the learning points are more around the safety. And we've already covered the building, as you can see, the building of a fire. So I'm going to throw some small pieces of oak on there to keep it going, just so you can watch it and I can watch it. And I'm just going to sit down and talk about safety surrounding fire a little bit more. And if you think this is getting boring and I keep saying the same thing over again, I probably am. That's just because it's important to stress the importance of safety and fire. Okay. So, first, I'm just gonna recap on a few things. Safety: don't do fires in wind if you absolutely have to. Have all the other stuff that could catch on fire that's not supposed to away. Don't try to burn wet things. Whenever you have a fire, have something to extinguish it, whether that's water or dirt or fire extinguisher. When you're starting a fire, start with the smallest stuff and work up. Always have someone at the fire attending it so that safety is always present. Be careful no matter what you're doing with fire. And then that's all for safety. And a lot of stuff comes on case-by-case situations, and it's really a judgment call, like most things. If you remember my metaphor from last week, fire is like a toddler, and so you've got to have a command presence with the toddler to get it to do what it's supposed to, and that's kind of how you have to be with fire. You have to control it. You get advantages from it, but you have to make sure you're taking care of it and keeping the fire controlled. As far as building it goes, you can use several different things, whether it's you can use newspaper to start it, fat wood, which is what I used. I like using that. You can also use leaf matter, but that stuff usually catches on fire. It burns out sooner than you'd like it to. You can use hay, but hay, like leaf litter, burns faster than you want it to. So it really just depends on what you have access to and what you're most comfortable with. As far as igniting it, you can use matches, a lighter, flint and steel, a battery and steel wool, which if you're unclear on that, we can talk about that later in another video. But it's important to have options. The reason I use matches and lighter is because I was trying to get this going quick, and even if you are camping, that doesn't mean you have to use something like a flint and steel. You don't have to follow. You don't have to use a flint and steel when you're camping. If you have access to matches and lighter, go ahead and use it. Knock yourself out. Usually that's a little bit more consistent. It works a little bit better. But that's just kind of how it goes. So if you're looking at the fire, which I hope you are, you see it's super windy. And right now I would probably call it quits because this fire isn't necessary, and it could get out of hand. Not that it wouldn't be controllable, because I've got my extinguisher. But because of the wind, we're gonna go ahead and cut the fire short. Go back and review stuff in your guidebook. Next week, or the assignment for this video is going to be to make a fire. It's not going to be mandatory or required. It's if you can, if you're allowed to, if you have somewhere to do it. And if you do, you don't necessarily have to put a video of yourself doing the whole thing. You can just take a picture of the fire and put it on the folder, or you can video a little part. Try to keep the videos under 2 minutes, so maybe when you're lighting it and then show it burning for a few seconds. But if you can get around to it, that's great. If you can't, you know, just make sure you understand this. So yeah, good job. Make sure you're turning in your assignments, except this week, because this week's not mandatory, but I highly encourage it. And look out for the assignment next week.